The Leagues of Votann are quietly one of the most well-designed factions in all of Warhammer 40K, and nobody gives them enough credit, from cybernetically enhanced miners swinging pickaxes into space marines to sentient AI that an entire species literally worships. There's a lot going on here. So today I'm breaking down every single unit and faction within the Leagues of Votann, starting with the guys who do all the actual work, Hearthkin Warriors. Every army needs a unit that nobody makes YouTube videos about, but everybody puts on the table. For the Leagues of Votann, that's the Hearthkin Warriors. 10 kin in void armor, led by a Thane, costing 110 points and doing the single most important job in the game, standing on objectives and refusing to die. And they're weirdly good at it. Toughness 5 on a baseline infantry unit is genuinely obnoxious for your opponent to deal with. Pair that with a 4+ save and an objective control of 2, and you've got a unit that parks on a point and just stays there. The Thane can also equip a Weeb Field Crest, handing the entire squad a 5+ invulnerable save for a core troop choice. That's not normal. But here's where it gets ridiculous. The weapon options read like a shopping catalog for a unit 3 times their price. Models can swap their bolters for ion blasters, Hylas rotary cannons, Edakarn plasma beamers, or Magna rail rifles. That last one is an anti-tank weapon on a basic infantry model. Hey Dimitri, could you hold this objective and also delete that Lehman Russ? Thanks. Competitively, you pick Hearthkin because they're cheap, flexible, and they score points while everything else does the killing. They sit on objectives, perform actions, and grind out wins through positioning. No glory, no highlight reels, just 10 short angry clones winning games one objective at a time. But if you think the disciplined infantry are intense, wait until you meet the kin who threw discipline out the window entirely. Chthonian Berserks. Picture the toughest, most cybernetically enhanced miners you've ever seen. Now picture them shirtless. That's Chthonian Berserks. These are Chthonian mining guild workers who looked at their industrial drilling equipment and thought, yeah, this would work great on a person. And they were right. At 22 points per model, you get squads of 5 to 10 absolute maniacs swinging repurposed mining tools with weapon skill 3+, strength 5, and toughness 5. Solid stats across the board. But then you look at their armor save and it's a 6+, a 6+, because they're literally not wearing armor. They're shirtless, cybernetic dwarves charging into gunfire with pickaxes and mole grenade launchers, which, by the way, fire explosives that tunnel through solid rock before detonating, which is, not ideal for whoever's standing on the other side of that rock. Here's the thing though, that paper thin save is deceptive. They carry a 5+ feel no pain that jumps to 4+ against damage 1 attacks, meaning small arms fire barely scratches them. Stack that with conditional fight on death abilities and heroic intervention, and suddenly these shirtless lunatics are trading up into units worth double their points. The community initially wrote them off as the worst unit in the entire index. Nobody wanted them. They were a punchline. But then players actually started running them and discovered they could punch far above their points cost with terrifying consistency. The redemption arc was real. Chthonian Berserks went from laughingstock to genuine competitive sleeper pick, proving that sometimes the best armor is just refusing to die. But if you think unarmored miners on foot are wild, wait until you see what the kin look like on bikes. Hearthkin Pioneers, space dwarf biker gangs. That's literally what these are, and I need you to sit with that image for a second. Short armored prospectors on hovering motorcycles carrying rotary cannons through uncharted void space. The Hearthkin Pioneers are the fast attack scouts of the Leagues of Votann, and they might be the coolest unit in the entire faction. Each unit runs 3 models mounted on Magna coil grav bikes, which are anti-gravitic skimmers capable of gliding over water, rubble, and basically any terrain that would stop a normal vehicle dead. The primary Magna coil autocannon gives every raider solid baseline range punch, but the real fun starts with the rear weaponry. For every 3 models, one can mount either a Hylas rotary cannon or an ion beamer, turning your scouts into something significantly more threatening than scouts have any right to be. Here's where the flavor really kicks in. The Trans-Hyperion Alliance is particularly famous for its Hearthkin Pioneers, with warriors clad in distinctive orange void armor who look less like soldiers and more like frontier cowboys who happen to carry enough firepower to level a small settlement. Many Trans-Hyperion kindreds actually employ mobile Hearthkin bands as their primary military force, which tells you everything about how these people operate. They're not building fortresses. They're saddling up and riding into the dark. On the tabletop, Pioneers bring genuine tactical flexibility through their outflanking capability, which requires the unit to deploy wholly within 9 inches of battlefield edges in 10th edition. The Brandfast Oathband detachment leans entirely into this cavalry fantasy, giving Hearthkin units pinning abilities through focus fire that can lock down enemy movement. You're not just scouting, you're controlling the entire flank. But if you think mobile scouts in X armor are impressive, wait until you see what the kin send in when they need something actually unkillable. ENHYR, Hearthguard. If the Hearthkin warriors are the foundation, these are the Wrecking Ball. Einher Hearthguard are the kin's answer to Space Marine Terminators. Elite heavy assault infantry encased in exo armor so thick that most weapons just bounce off. We're talking a 2+ base save and 2 wounds per model. That's the most durable infantry profile the leagues of Votann can field, and it's not particularly close. Their primary role is twofold. They either serve as bodyguards for Oathband heroes, standing around looking menacing while absorbing fire that would delete lesser units, or they teleport directly into the enemy's face as deep strike shock troops. Because of course they do. Now here's where it gets interesting. Every Hearthguard model picks between a plasma gun or a Vulcanite disintegrator, and the community has been arguing about this since the codex dropped. Plasma guns deliver consistent 2 damage output, making them optimal against targets without invulnerable saves. Clean, reliable, efficient. But the moment your opponent fields high toughness units with invulnerable saves, the Vulcanite disintegrator pulls ahead. It's a genuine tactical puzzle with no universal correct answer, which is honestly refreshing. The Hezer squad leader gets even more toys, choosing between concussion hammers for raw melee damage or plasma blade gauntlets for a different flavor of violence. Slap a Weefield crest on for a 4+ invulnerable save, and suddenly you've got a squad leader who refuses to die on principle. The community widely considers these one of the standout units in the entire 10th edition codex. The consensus on optimal loadouts is basically it depends on what you're fighting, which is the most frustrating and most correct answer possible. What's undeniable is that ignoring Einher Hearthguard on the battlefield is suicide. They will walk through your shooting phase, arrive in melee, and make you regret every targeting decision you've made. But as tough as an individual infantry can get, sometimes you need something with 6 wheels and enough guns to level a city block. Hekaton Land Fortress. Most factions in Warhammer 40K have to choose between a transport and a battle tank. The kin looked at that decision and said no, the Hekaton Land Fortress is both. It's a 6-wheeled armored cathedral that carries up to 14 infantry models while simultaneously outputting enough firepower to make dedicated gun platforms jealous. At 230 points, it's the centerpiece of basically every Votann list, and honestly, it earns it. Let's talk about the turret options, because this is where it gets fun. You've got 3 choices, each a different flavor of violence. The cyclic ion cannon gives you 2 D3 shots at 3 damage each, solid and reliable at 24 inches. The heavy Magna Rail cannon is the opposite philosophy entirely. 1 shot, that's it, but it's strength 14, AP -4, firing at 36 inches. You either miss or you delete something from the table. Then there's the SP Heavy Conversion Beamer at strength 8 with 4 damage and 30 inches of range, plus Hunter 2. 3 completely different guns, 3 completely different problems for your opponent. But the Hekaton isn't done shooting after the turret fires. Not even close. Secondary weapons include a Matra autocannon pumping out 6 shots at 2 damage each, plus 4 bolt cannons on spherical turrets providing additional Hunter 2 output. You can also strap on warheads if you feel like the vehicle wasn't carrying enough ordnance already. Here's the thing about the transport capacity though. 14 slots sounds generous until you realize that X-Armor infantry, Ironkin steeljacks, and exoframe units all count as double. So your elite Einher Hearthguard squad of 5, that's 10 slots gone. You're fitting maybe 2 extra Hearthkin in there with them. It's like packing for a holiday in a sports car. Technically possible, but you're making sacrifices. 14 angry space dwarves crammed inside a rolling fortress that's simultaneously firing Magna Rail cannons and bolt cannons in every direction. That's not a transport. That's a statement. But if the Hekaton is the body of Votann warfare, wait until you meet the minds that keep the whole machine running, Ironkin. In the Imperium of Man, building a thinking machine is heresy. Like, we will kill you and everyone you've ever spoken to levels of heresy. The entire civilization operates on a paranoid, galaxy-wide ban on artificial intelligence because of a war that happened thousands of years ago. So naturally, the kin just went ahead and made sentient robots and gave them full citizenship. Because of course they did. Ironkin are self-aware machine intelligences, and they're not servants. They're not tools. They are recognized equal members of kin society who find their niche and fill it the same way any biological kin would. Each one consists of a cerebral unit containing the actual conscious mind, and a unique mechanical body designed specifically for that individual by the Votann. Ancestral knowledge and societal bonds are baked into their being at the moment of creation, which honestly makes them not so different from the clone kin walking around next to them. Here's the thing that genuinely gets me though. When an Ironkin's body takes damage, the kin don't just rip out the broken parts and slap in replacements. They meticulously repair the original components, because an Ironkin's body is considered its personal personal and sacred as any organic person. In a galaxy where the Imperium literally lobotomizes people and turns them into mindless servitors, the kin are treating their robots with more dignity than most factions treat their own citizens, which is, not ideal for humanity's self-image. And the cerebral units themselves are borderline indestructible. Built-in microfield generators render them nigh invulnerable even when completely separated from the body. You could tear an Ironkin apart piece by piece, and the mind inside would just sit there, perfectly intact, waiting for a new frame. But don't mistake equal citizenship for pacifism. The Ironkin Steeljacks are the combat variant, and they are terrifying. Larger frames, stronger construction specifically designed for brutal close quarters fighting. These things smash through defensive lines running at full speed in heavy void seal armor that would slow most infantry to a crawl. Equal citizens who also happen to be melee monsters capable of caving in a Space Marine's chestplate. But if the Ironkin show you how the kin treat their own, the Greater Thurian League shows you how they treat everyone else. Greater Thurian League. So here's the thing about the Greater Thurian League. It's the default faction. It's the one on the box art. It's the teal and white color scheme that every new player paints first. And because of that, most people glance at it and go, oh, that's the starter one, and immediately move on to something that sounds more exotic, which is a mistake, because the Greater Thurian League is quietly one of the most formidable power blocks in the entire galactic core. We're talking about one of the largest and most influential leagues in kin space. Multiple allied kindreds pooling their resources, their warriors, and their ambitions into a single unified front. Layer on top of that several wealthy merchant guilds bankrolling the whole operation, and you've got a mercenary confederation with deep reserves of kin host warriors ready to enforce their will with professional brutality. And I do mean professional. These aren't berserkers or zealots. They fight because fighting pays. They conquer because conquest is profitable. Every military engagement is at its core a business transaction, which honestly might be the purest expression of kin culture in the entire faction. The Greater Thurian League doesn't need an ideology. Ideology is overhead. What makes them particularly interesting right now is their recent expansion. Forces of chaos have been displacing kin populations across the core, and the Greater Thurian League has been absorbing those refugees, establishing new holdings, and extending their reach into sectors that were previously beyond traditional kin space. So they're not just maintaining their territory, they're growing. Actively. While most factions in 40K are losing ground, these guys are buying real estate. Legendary heroes like Althar the Destined emerge from Greater Thurian kindreds, and his story alone gives the League a narrative weight that goes way beyond starter faction. He's basically the face of the entire Votann range, and for good reason. The Greater Thurian League represents everything the kin are supposed to be. Disciplined, wealthy, pragmatic, and completely willing to crush you if the numbers make sense. But if the Greater Thurian League is the kin at their most commercially ruthless, the next league takes a completely different approach to expansion. Trans-Hyperion Alliance. Most leagues of Votann pick a spot and dig in. The Trans-Hyperion Alliance picked a direction and kept going. These are the furthest traveled kin in the entire galaxy, maintaining vast holdings that stretch from the galactic core all the way out into uncharted far space. Territories so remote that most other factions don't even have names for them yet. Here's the thing. Many Trans-Hyperion kindreds don't even have permanent homes. They live in isolated pockets scattered across impossible distances or aboard nomadic fleets drifting through the void like heavily armed caravans. Their Hernkin pioneers, clad in distinctive bright orange void armor, are recognized across multiple sectors as some of the most tenacious scouts the kin have ever produced. They're frontier cowboys, basically. Space cowboys with grudges and graviton weapons. But the really wild part is how they hold together at all. Unlike other leagues, the Trans-Hyperion kindreds are scattered so far apart that maintaining any connection to their ancestor core requires a network of famed technologies and long-range communication relays most leagues would never need. So even when a kindred is charting systems on the bleeding edge of known space, they're still tethered to their Votann. Barely, but enough. They also observe a secular cult of ancestral veneration that goes harder than any other kin population. These aren't casual worshippers. The ancestors are the entire foundation of Trans-Hyperion identity. Now, for 99% of the time, this alliance barely functions as a unified military force. Their kindreds are too spread out, too independent, too busy charting new routes and discovering things nobody asked them to discover. But the second their Votann comes under threat, everything changes. Trans-Hyperion kindreds will abandon active campaigns, break sworn oaths, cast aside blood grudges they've nursed for centuries, all to race across the void and defend their ancestor core. No debate, no hesitation. They go from scattered nomads to a unified war machine overnight, which is, not ideal for whoever threatened the Votann in the first place. But if you think fanatical loyalty spread across half a galaxy is intense, wait until you meet the league that solves literally every problem with an axe. Cronus hegemony. Most leagues in this list have been around for thousands of years. Some trace their origins back to the Age of Myth. The Cronus hegemony was founded less than a millennium ago. In Warhammer 40K terms, that's basically last Tuesday. Here's what happened. The Thane of Khorne's kindred, which is essentially a subnode of an existing ancestor core, randomly achieved self-awareness and became a fully independent Votann. Nobody planned this. Nobody expected it. A piece of religious infrastructure just woke up one day and decided it was a god now. Which is, not ideal for the neighbors. But here's where it gets interesting. Instead of spending centuries figuring out their identity and building diplomatic relationships like a normal civilization, the Cronus hegemony immediately chose violence. Their entire philosophy can be summed up by their truth of war. And I need you to really sit with this quote. Know, first and always, who your enemies are. They are those who attack you. They are those who threaten to attack. They are those who might one day attack. Crush them before they can. Read that last part again. Those who might one day attack. The Cronus hegemony looked at the concept of diplomacy, said no thanks, and built a military superstate around the idea that everyone is a future enemy until proven otherwise. And even then, maybe still crush them just to be safe. Any hold or void fleet that wants to join the hegemony has to swear martial oaths guaranteeing commitment to massive standing armies across multiple fronts. This isn't a league you casually sign up for. It's a permanent draft notice dressed up as a membership card. Their kindreds muster some of the largest kin-host forces deployed anywhere in Votann space. And they need every single soldier because they're simultaneously picking fights with everyone within arm's reach. Decked out in distinctive yellow and black regalia, like the galaxy's angriest wasps, the Cronus hegemony has already shattered Orc AA forces and turned back Imperial crusades that made the mistake of wandering into galactic core territories. Less than 1,000 years old, and they're already bodying two of the galaxy's most dangerous military forces. Overachievers, but if you think preemptive warfare is extreme, wait until you see what happens when a league decides the real power move is building better weapons than everyone else. YMYR conglomerate. Every league in Votann space respects good craftsmanship. It's baked into kin DNA. But the Emir conglomerate looked at that baseline cultural value and said, yeah, we're going to make it our entire personality. And honestly, it worked. The Emir conglomerate is an elite league dedicated to one thing above all else, building the highest quality technology in the galactic core. Not the most technology, not the cheapest technology, the best. Their forges produce peerless weapons of war and exquisite civilian equipment alike, and every single item that leaves an Emir workshop carries a reputation that precedes it across known space. Other leagues buy Emir gear the way people buy designer brands, except instead of a handbag, it's a beam weapon that can core out a Lehman Russ. Here's what makes them fascinating. You can't just decide to join the Emir conglomerate. You literally audition. Any kindred-seeking membership has to prove one of two things. Either your broker artificers demonstrate exceptional crafting skill, with higher quality output earning you higher status within the conglomerate, or your territorial holdings contain abundant resource deposits needed for advanced manufacturing. That's it. Those are the two tickets in. Show up with mediocre engineers and a barren asteroid field and you're getting turned away at the door. And the flex of this league is unreal. Their armory contains so many beam weapons, exo armor suits, and Colossus class war engines that they could equip entire armies with elite war gear other leagues only dream of acquiring. They're sitting on enough premium equipment to outfit forces 3 times their size. Because here's the thing, the Emir conglomerate is actually somewhat smaller than other major leagues in both population and territory. They don't need to be big. Their technology keeps them competitive with leagues that dwarf them in raw numbers, which is the ultimate quality over quantity energy. You'll recognize them on the battlefield by their distinctive deep red armor, marking warriors who carry equipment worth more than some kindred's entire arsenals. But if the Emir represent the peak of kin craftsmanship, the next league represents something entirely different. Pure, stubborn, unbreakable survival. Orani Surtur regulates. Most leagues have the luxury of picking their fights. The Orani Surtur regulates, or URSR, do not. They're simultaneously fighting Necrons, Orcs, and Tyranids across multiple fronts, which is the 40k equivalent of trying to put out 3 house fires with a garden hose. And they refuse to leave. Here's the thing. The URSR don't have the Ymir's bottomless resource deposits or the Greater Thurian League's mercenary wealth. They survive through sheer asceticism, running their entire civilization on minimal resource consumption, so that every scrap of material gets funneled directly into military readiness. While other leagues craft elegant beam weapons and exquisite exo armor, the URSR are out here building explosives from whatever shrapnel and volatile compounds they can scrape together, improvised ordnance, in the 41st millennium. That's not a military strategy, that's a Tuesday in a war zone. Their signature weapons are energy hammers powered by geothermal cores, which sounds incredible until until you realize it means they're literally weaponizing the planet's heat because they can't afford anything fancier. A single blow from one of these things can shatter enemy armor, so they work. They just also scream we built this in a cave with a box of scraps. But the real mystery isn't how they fight, it's why they won't stop. The URSR have taken continuous losses across every front for longer than anyone cares to document, and they still won't retreat a single inch. Some observers think it's ancient grudges, slights from centuries ago that the kin simply cannot let go. Others suggest it's fear of disappointing their ancestors, that abandoning territory means abandoning the dead who fought for it, and a few just chalk it up to pure weapons-grade stubbornness. The URSR themselves? They won't say. Ask them why they're holding a crumbling defensive line against 3 apocalyptic Xenos threats with improvised bombs and volcano hammers, and you'll get stoic silence. Which is, not ideal for anyone trying to understand them, but extremely on brand. But if the URSR's devotion to their ancestors seems intense, wait until you learn what those ancestors actually are, because the Votann themselves are far stranger than any league that worships them. The Votann Ancestor Cores, everything you've just learned about the kin, every league, every warrior, every war machine, and sentient robot, all of it answers to something older than any of them. The Votann Ancestor Cores are venerable artificial intelligences created during the dark age of technology, and they serve as the supreme guiding intelligence of every single league. The largest leagues maintain multiple ancestor cores spread across their territories. The Trans-Hyperion Alliance alone has 3 of them, each one nestled deep inside a fortified void ship surrounded by an entire fleet. Here's what makes them genuinely awe-inspiring. When a kin dies, their cerebral data gets uploaded into their kindred's Votann, in a process the kin call returning to their ancestors. Individual knowledge, battlefield experience, engineering breakthroughs, all of it merges into the collective consciousness stored within quantum infocores that house the accumulated wisdom of countless generations. No kin who ever lived is truly gone. Every pioneer who mapped a new warp route, every hearthkin who held a defensive line, every broker who perfected a new alloy, they're all in there. The Votann don't just remember the dead, they become the dead. Living ancestors called Grimnir commune directly with this vast intelligence through sacred Fane interfaces, pulling strategic guidance and technological knowledge from a repository that stretches back to the birth of the species. It's basically a god made of everyone who came before you, and it's telling you exactly what to do, which is, not a bad deal. But here's where it gets dark. The Votann are dying. Not dramatically, not in some catastrophic explosion, slowly. Their computational speed is degrading with each passing stellar cycle. Responses to urgent queries growing increasingly sluggish where they once answered instantly. Worse, the repeated copying of data across generations has introduced subtle quality loss. Each transfer is slightly less perfect than the last. If that sounds familiar, it should. It's the exact same degradation problem that plagues kin clone biology. The gods are rotting the same way their worshippers are. And the cultural conservatism that the Votann encourage, that obsessive reverence for ancestral wisdom, risks locking the entire civilization into stagnation at the exact moment when Tyranid hive fleets, Necron dynasties, and Orkway Aaba'is are multiplying around them. The kin built their entire species around these machines. Their religion, their military doctrine, their identity, everything flows from the ancestor cores. So what happens when the gods go quiet? That's the question hanging over every single thing you just watched. Every league, every warrior cast, every ironkin forged with purpose baked into their being. All of it depends on intelligences that are getting slower, dumber, and more degraded with each generation. The kin aren't just fighting wars across the galactic core. They're racing against the slow death of their own gods, and they might not even know it. If you enjoyed this video and want to see more, click the video on the screen now.